Intro. When they use your past against you, there comes a moment in every person's life when someone tries to chain them to who they used to be. They dig up your mistakes, your failures, the broken version of you that once existed, and they present it like evidence, as if your past were a prison you can never leave. But what they don't understand is that the human spirit is not a courtroom. It's a journey, a process of becoming. Michael Sandel once said that a just life is not one lived without fault, but one lived with reflection. And this is where Stoic emotional mastery begins. Not by denying what happened, but by choosing how you respond when someone weaponizes your past. You can either defend yourself endlessly, or rise above the argument entirely, because when you react, you grant them power. When you respond with calm truth, you reclaim your dignity. So today we explore what to say, and how to think when someone uses your past against you. Not with anger, not with pride, but with the wisdom of a philosopher and the calm of a Stoic. Remember, your past is not your sentence. It is your schooling. The lessons it taught you are proof of growth, not guilt. This is not just philosophy. This is emotional sovereignty. Let's begin. The weight of memory and the power of perception. Michael Sandel often reminds his students that our identities are shaped by moral memory, by what we learn through our own errors and experiences. But others often weaponize memory to judge rather than to understand. When someone brings up your past, what they're really doing is projecting their discomfort with change. They don't believe people can evolve, because perhaps they haven't evolved themselves. So they anchor you to an old version of you that makes them feel safe, because that version was predictable, controllable, and small Stoicism teaches us, we suffer not from events, but from our judgments about them. The moment you let someone's opinion redefine who you are now, you surrender authorship of your story. So when they remind you of your failures, don't argue. Don't explain. Instead, breathe and answer with clarity. Yes, I did that. And that moment taught me who I no longer wish to be. That single line disarms the attack. It removes the fuel of shame. It acknowledges truth, yet declares growth. Because those who use your past against you want a reaction. They want to see the old version return. Angry, defensive, emotional. But when you respond with calm acknowledgement, you show them that the person they're speaking to no longer exists. The Stoic doesn't erase his past. He integrates it. He doesn't run from his mistakes. He turns them into material for virtue. In Sandel's philosophy, justice begins with self-examination. And in Stoicism, mastery begins the same way. The one who has reflected cannot be manipulated. Turning accusation into authority. There's a paradox in emotional mastery. The more at peace you are with your past, the less power others have to use it against you. When someone says, you used to be, or you did, they are trying to frame your identity in the past tense. Your task is to speak in the present. Yes, I was that once, and that's why I understand strength now. That answer transforms accusation into authority. It shifts the conversation from guilt to growth. Michael Sandel often speaks about moral agency, the capacity to take responsibility and still move forward with dignity. That's what Stoicism embodies. Not perfection, but progress under pressure. When you stand in front of someone who mocks your transformation, realize this truth. Their memory of you is outdated. They are quoting an old chapter of a book you've already rewritten. Don't waste your breath defending who you used to be. Live so powerfully that their version of your story becomes irrelevant. Emotional mastery means choosing peace over pride. It's not weakness, it's wisdom in motion. The Stoic doesn't need to win the argument. He wins the moment by remaining unmoved, because silence, when grounded in self-respect, speaks louder than any defense. When judgment becomes a mirror, when someone judges you by your past, it often says more about their present than your history. Michael Sandel reminds us that moral judgment reveals the kind of society or person making that judgment. And this truth holds on the personal level as well. When a person can't see your growth, it's because they are trapped in their own static idea of who people are allowed to become. The Stoic sees beyond that. He realizes that judgment is a mirror. It reflects the insecurities of the one who speaks. When they say, "You'll never change," what they mean is, "I don't believe change is possible for me." So instead of arguing, observe. Their words are not arrows. They are confessions. Each insult reveals a limitation they haven't yet overcome. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." And Sandel would add, "The highest justice is not retaliation, but understanding." When you remain centered, you remind them, and yourself, that moral worth is not frozen in time. You can say calmly, "If you still see me as who I was, then you haven't met who I've become." That statement isn't arrogance. It's truth spoken without attachment. You're not trying to prove anything. You're simply drawing a line between perception and reality. To master emotion is to master reflection. You look into their judgment and see your own clarity looking back. Because once you see judgment as projection, you no longer take it personally. And in that moment you gain the quiet freedom the Stoics called apatheia, serenity untouched by opinion. The Stoics reply, power through calm. There's a form of power that doesn't shout, doesn't explain, and doesn't need to justify itself. It's the calm authority that comes from self-knowledge. When someone throws your past at you like a weapon, imagine it as a spark. You can let it burn you, or you can let it light your wisdom. The Stoic chooses the latter. Michael Sandel once said, "Moral clarity doesn't come from silence. It comes from reasoned calm." That's the secret of Stoic emotional mastery. To speak without heat, to answer without ego. When they provoke you, pause. That pause is your fortress.
Inside that single breath lies all the training of philosophy. The power to decide whether you'll react or remain sovereign. Say this, softly but firmly. I respect that you remember that version of me.
But I live by what I've learned since then. That line does something extraordinary. It breaks the cycle of emotional contagion. Instead of escalating the tension, it dissolves it. The other person expects defense. What they receive is poise. And poise disarms hostility faster than anger ever could. The Stoic learns that power is not about dominance, but about discipline. You can't control what others recall, but you can control what you embody. In the calm response lies an unspoken message. You no longer have access to the chaos I once lived in. That is emotional evolution. That is what Sandel calls moral agency, the ability to act according to reason, even under the shadow of provocation. The redemption of the past. The past is not an enemy to defeat. It's a teacher to understand. The Stoics viewed every failure as an instructor in disguise. Michael Sandel echoes this through his belief that our errors create the moral vocabulary through which we learn justice and empathy. When someone uses your past against you, they're unknowingly reminding you of your own journey toward wisdom. Instead of resisting it, reclaim it. Say to yourself, everything that once broke me is now the reason I stand unshaken. That is redemption, not in the religious sense, but in the philosophical one. You redeem your past when you assign it meaning. You turn pain into perspective, guilt into gratitude, regret into responsibility. The Stoic never asks for a different past. He asks for deeper understanding. Because to wish the past away is to reject the foundation of your growth. If others still live in your yesterday, let them. You are not obligated to visit that version of yourself again. Your duty is to honor the lessons and walk forward with grace. Sandel teaches that a just life is a life examined but not condemned, and you, by reflecting, accepting, and transforming, have already achieved what your critics have not. Moral progress. When you understand this, their judgment loses its sting. Your silence becomes eloquent. Your calm becomes strength. You no longer carry the weight of the past. You carry its wisdom. And that wisdom, not your defense, not your pride, is what defines who you are today. The silence that speaks, there comes a point where words can no longer defend the truth, because the truth has already been lived. When someone keeps returning to your past, there is nothing more to explain, only something to embody. Michael Sandel teaches that public discourse often fails not because we lack arguments, but because we forget to listen for meaning. Likewise, in personal conflict, the Stoic listens not to win but to understand. And when understanding is absent, silence becomes the higher language. To remain silent is not to surrender. It is to stand upon inner ground that cannot be shaken. Every calm breath says, I refuse to make my peace dependent on your opinion. The silence of mastery unsettles those addicted to reaction. They expect noise, defense, proof, but you offer stillness. That stillness mirrors their restlessness back to them, and suddenly they see what you have that they don't. Peace. When a person weaponizes your history, let your composure become your response. Because silence in that moment is not emptiness and it's moral clarity. It says, I've already made peace with what you're still trying to use against me. The Stoic doesn't suppress emotion. He directs it. He turns what could be anger into awareness, what could be shame into serenity. In that transformation lies freedom. The kind of freedom Sandel calls the essence of self-governance, the ability to rule oneself. The philosophy of becoming, your past, is a chapter, not a life sentence. Every scar, every mistake, every lesson, it's all evidence that you participated in existence fully. Stoicism teaches that nothing truly good or bad happens to the soul unless we decide it so. The moral task, as Sandel might put it, is to take responsibility for meaning. The people who try to reduce you to your past are still spectators of your earlier story. But you are no longer on that stage. You are writing the sequel. One act of composure, one decision of integrity at a time. Say this to yourself quietly. I will no longer apologize for the distance I've traveled. That statement honors your evolution. It acknowledges the road between who you were and who you are. No one has the right to shrink you back into an old identity, just because it comforts their memory. Michael Sandel often reminds us that moral growth requires the courage to question our inherited narratives. Your past is one such narrative, inherited from your former self. To master it is not to erase it, but to outgrow it with understanding. This is the heart of Stoic emotional mastery. You cannot control what people recall, but you can choose what you represent when they recall it. Every calm reaction, every dignified silence, every thoughtful word becomes proof that your transformation is real. The freedom of the forgiven self. At the end of every philosophical reflection lies one truth. Peace begins when you stop arguing with your own story. The past cannot be rewritten, but it can be reinterpreted, and interpretation is power. Michael Sandel says that justice, whether social or personal, starts with acknowledgement. You acknowledge your history, not to be chained by it, but to use it as moral evidence that growth is possible. So the next time someone brings up your mistakes, don't meet them with anger. Meet them with gratitude, because their memory is a reminder of how far you've come. Smile, breathe, and think. That version of me built the strength that stands before you. The Stoics would call that acceptance amor fati, the love of fate. It means loving not just what happened, but what it made of you. You owe no defense to those who live in your past. Your calm presence is your answer. Your peace is your proof. Your life lived with integrity is your closing argument. And when you walk away, quietly, purposefully, you are not walking from them. You are walking toward the version of yourself that no longer needs to be understood to be free. So remember this, today and always. No one can use your past against you if you've already made it part of your strength. And the one who forgives himself, completely, sincerely, wisely, is untouchable. The end.